everyone. Thank you for joining in.
Good afternoon.
You can see the presentation.
Yes, madam.
Okay. So this is, I think you have already started some lectures on your BE 5312 project appraisal module with I think Dr. Danuja. So I will be doing two parts in this particular module. So the first part that I will be discussing with you is on cost benefit analysis, and then next I will also we will also be discussing about risk management. So cost benefit analysis and risk management I will be doing with you in this project appraisal module. Okay. So today we are going to start on the first of these two modules, these two areas.
Recording in
which
progress.
Is on cost benefit analysis. So in these couple of sessions, we'll basically look at why you might do a cost benefit analysis when it comes to project appraisal. Also, how you will go about doing a CBA exercise, the steps involved, and the basic things we need to do when we are conducting a CBA. So, before I start, can I just know from you if any of you in your organizations have you conducted cost benefit analysis? Maybe not you personally, but are you aware of any cost benefit analysis done for particular projects? Mm, no one has done. So maybe any of you who might have been involved in any public sector projects, anybody have come across this type of analysis, like CBA analysis, cost benefit analysis? Okay, then we will see. So maybe as we start going through the lecture, you might um, uh, realize that okay, maybe you have seen certain appraisals done through this way. So we'll see. Okay, so when it comes to project appraisal, so if you're a private company, the main objective that you have is to maximize the profits, isn't it? So when you do a financial appraisal of projects, that's what you focus on. So I think maybe even in the lectures that you might have had so far with Dr. Danuja, you might have looked at these aspects. How to financially appraise projects to see if a particular project is going to make us money or not. And so otherwise, why would anybody invest in a project if they don't get any incentive back? So basically, when you're doing a financial appraisal of a project, you're checking to see whether you get some return by investing in this project. So is there some kind of an incentive for a person to invest in that particular project? Now, the issue comes when we are talking about public projects. So that is fine when you are appraising normal projects that's conducted by the private sector, maybe a construction project or whatever it is, an IT project or whatever the type of project, with the uh, with the expressed objective of maximizing profits. But when it comes to public sector projects, let's say construction of a new road, or um, or say a power supply project, or some kind of a say some kind of health undertaking, some kind of health uh, care facility, um, then what happens? So here, for a government, the main objective is not just making profits, is it? There are lots of other considerations that a government has to consider when they think about undertaking public projects or investing public money. So, for instance, whether a project is going to bring about any social benefits, any environmental benefits. So, if you just appraise these type of projects only using financial measures, there can be a problem, because you will then uh, you might not be capturing all those other benefits of these types of projects, the social welfare type of improvements. And the other thing is, it's quite difficult to appraise many of these public projects financially. So, for example, think about a normal road project, not a toll road, a normal road that we use every day. So we don't really pay the government a particular toll or anything to use that particular road. See, so likewise, many of these public projects, they are not, the products, they are not really sold at a market price. So maybe a project that a government undertakes to reduce air pollution or water pollution, or say a water supply project, the health improvements you might get from a sanitation project. So then there will be an issue if you just try to do a financial appraisal of these types of projects. And then also the other thing is, there are some outputs produced by public sector projects, for instance, things like water, electricity, that the public sector produces. Oftentimes, these things are sold at not at the market price, even in Sri Lanka. Say, there was recently, there's been a lot of discussion about these things. See, most of the times the prices are subsidized, so the customer is not actually paying the actual market value for these types of products. So then again, if we just try to do a financial appraisal to measure how much income, how much benefits we are getting out of this type of projects, it might again not give us the accurate picture. And even if you do sell these outputs at commercial or market prices, still there are lots of other associated benefits, social welfare improvements associated with these public sector projects that will affect the project revenue. So there can be lots of other benefits that's not really captured in a financial measure or the market price of an output only. Right. So, for instance, things like the health benefits, reduced reduce illnesses that you might get from having a clean water supply. Just from the price of the water, that sort of benefits will not be really captured. So this is where this idea of externalities come in. So what do we mean by externalities? So most of the time in the private sector, when we are evaluating an investment opportunity, we only consider about the costs and the benefits to ourselves. So imagine, okay, I'm going to build a house or build a apartment complex. So if you're doing a financial appraisal of this investment idea, what you will consider is what will be the costs I have to incur, what will be the benefits I will get. So my costs might be my construction costs, my land costs, and then once the building is constructed, the operational costs, all those things that I will have to incur. My expenses. And then my benefits might be whatever the income I get once I rent out the apartments. So those are the costs and the benefits to the investor, to myself. But can there be other costs and benefits that are incurred by people who are other than me? So people who are not directly part of this particular project, but still might incur a cost or a benefit. Right? So what we mean by an externality is basically it's a consequence of these economic activities that we do that are experienced by unrelated third parties. So people, stakeholders who are not really directly involved in the activity or the project. So these are people, third parties that did not really choose to incur that particular cost or benefit. It wasn't their decision. They were not really part of the project. But still, there's a cost to them or a benefit that they get from them. So these externalities, therefore, they can be either positive, the good things, positive things we get, these third parties get, or they can be negative things. So imagine there's a new mixed development project being constructed somewhere. Imagine something like the Port City project. So what can be some of the positive and negative externalities associated with this type of a construction project? Can you think? So any positive things or negative things that might be experienced by unrelated third parties of the project?
Extended land area.
Sorry?
Extended land area.
Okay, so what's the benefit that a third party might get? Third party means person, somebody who's not going to be, say, part of the project, using the project or investing in the project. So since I remember most of you were from construction side, so are there any, say, it doesn't have to be a big project like that, even a small construction project, can there be any negative externalities? Yes, Jayanta, you were going to say something?
Environmental,
Environmental.
or some other third parties also.
Yes, they might have to yeah, there can be
Human.
certain, yeah, environmental issues, maybe say air pollution or noise issues that they might have to experience, isn't it? So those would be negative externalities.
Human also.
Yeah. So any positive things then?
Land value, madam.
Land value might go up. So I'm not part of the project, but I live somewhere close by. But because there is this big development project happening close by to me, my land value might also go up. So that's a positive thing to me, isn't it?
Increase
So,
job opportunities.
Job opportunities, yeah, there can be increased job opportunities. So that's a positive externality. That might be new businesses coming up. So new job opportunities, increased income for the local residents.
Will develop
demand for resources.
Mhm.
Material, demand for resources, material.
Yeah, but if that, say, if that's going to be directly used for the project, that will not be an externality, because that will then become you're becoming a supplier to the project. Then you are involved in the project. But say general increase of business opportunities because of this big development in the area, that can be an externality. Yeah. So yeah. So likewise, there can be both positive and negative things that unrelated third parties of a project might experience because of a project taking place. So, say there can be positive externalities associated with different things. So, even things like a vaccination program, say, okay, so a couple of years ago, we've all been vaccinated for COVID-19. Okay, so what can an unrelated third party get from that? So the people who are not vaccinated, let's say children or older people who have not been vaccinated, will they be benefited from the rest of us being vaccinated? Yes, there is a positive externality there, isn't it? So if we limit the spread of diseases, if we if by us being vaccinated, we might develop say herd immunity or whatever it is, and the unrelated third parties can also benefit from that. So we are not spreading the disease likewise. So even things like training, say you train somebody, your company trains somebody, yes, the company will get a direct benefit, but say then you leave the company and you go join somebody else, then that unrelated third party will also get a benefit from that training. So you train people in things like, say first aid or something, and you go and save somebody's life somewhere, then that unrelated third party is benefiting, isn't it? So even things like advertising, what are the positive externalities? Say these big companies, they are advertising on, say, places like YouTube or say Twitter or Facebook. So what's the externality to us, the positive externality that we get to use those technologies for free. So YouTube and those things, they can stay free because of this advertising, isn't it? So as users of those services, we get a positive externality out of that. So anything, any good thing that unrelated third parties, people who are not directly part of a activity get, we can identify as positive externalities. Likewise, then the other side of it are the negative externalities. And of course, as you correctly said, these we can quite easily identify. So here, this is from the Umaoya project. So these the problems with drinking water and damages people in the area were experiencing. Then air pollution due to, say, industrial activities or a particular project taking place, a construction project taking place. So all of those are negative externalities. So then, within this context, why do we need cost-benefit analysis? It's to try and capture these things. So when we only look at the private costs to ourselves, that's not really capturing the total cost of a product, service, or activity. If you just cost the construction cost of that particular project, that's not really going to capture all these other things, the costs to the people in the surrounding area due to pollution or noise or say increased traffic or congestion, or even the benefits those third parties might get from increased job opportunities or say increased land values. So none of those things would be captured there. So you're only costing the price for the client. So there are these other external costs associated with these activities that we are not normally considering in a financial appraisal. Right? So private costs, they will only include the costs that a firm or an individual will have to pay when you're, say, purchasing equipment, hiring labor, buying materials or other inputs, when you're producing a good service or an activity. These will be things that the customer or client or the consumer will pay. On the other hand, then the external costs would be the things that the other people, the society in general, will experience because of the production or consumption of a particular good or a service. So these will typically not be included in the company, the investor client, the client's cost. So when we say social costs, that will include both these private and external costs. So even if a firm or an individual does not directly pay for these external costs, they are still there. The client might not pay for the increased congestion in the area or the increased pollution or the noise pollution, but still doesn't mean that the cost is not there. So in a project, the net benefit, the net social benefit then would be the difference between the total social benefits and the total social costs. So not just the individual private costs, but also including the external costs and benefits both. Right? So if you take the example of driving a car, for instance, then the social cost of that particular activity will include your private costs. That means the things that we will pay directly, like the price of fuel, oil, maintenance, insurance, or the driving time that we spend in driving the car, depreciation, all those things that we will personally bear as the owner of a car, plus the costs that will be experienced by people who are other than me and the people who use this car. So they might experience increased congestion because there's one more car on the road, there's increased air pollution, all those things. So the total social cost of that particular activity will include both these types of costs. So why it's important to look at these external costs? Because one, they have a implication for the in determining the price of a product, the output levels, resource usage, competition, all these things. There can be certain, say, big external costs associated with a particular good. Say, I'm producing, say, I'm producing some kind of a garment. Okay, I have a factory, I'm producing a garment. So if there are lots of significant external costs associated with this activity, say I'm using very harmful dyes, which I just let out to the environment. So I'm contaminating the waterways. So that there's pollution going out to the environment. So there are significant external costs, but say those things will not be reflected in my price, the cost that I have to personally pay for my materials or operation of the activity. So because those costs are not really reflected, then the price of my product will be too low because I'm not really paying these external costs for the pollution and all these things. So I'm able to sell the t-shirts I produced very cheaply. 500 for 400 rupees, I said. But the actual cost I am I'm causing to produce this is much more than 400 because of those pollution and all those things. So because my prices are low, I might be able to sell a lot of volume. So people might be buying my product a lot because it's very cheap. So I'm producing more and more, and I am causing more and more external costs which are not captured anywhere. So unless these external costs are reflected, that's not a very socially efficient situation. So there can be competitive issues. So say some company in Europe, let's say, they might have very strict, say, environmental standards. So say the company that's over there producing the same t-shirt that I am producing. So they might be expected to, or they might be kind of forced to take into consideration some of the external costs that they are making. So they might have to, they might not be able to let out polluted, say, harmful chemicals out, just out into the environment. So they might need to, say, undertake some kind of treatments, or they might have to use some other or more expensive type of materials that are not produced in that kind of harmful waste. So then what happens? So the price of their product would be much higher because of those reasons compared to me. Because I'm not really paying for those external costs, but they are made to pay for those external costs. Then there can be competitive issues too. Say a company in China might be able to produce things quite cheaply, whereas compared to a company in a place where you have to take into consideration all these other aspects. So if our production consumption decisions are based on these social costs and benefits, then society as a whole would be better off. Because see, these external costs, they actually matter in the real world. Say, so governments most nowadays, they try to actually make us take these things into consideration. So say in certain cities, say for instance, in London these days, they are trying to say introduce these congestion charge for vehicles. So if you drive a vehicle in the city, you have to pay a tax for the pollution that you're causing, the congestion that you're causing. So what's that doing? That's really, you're trying to let the person that actually causes that external cost to bear the cost. So you cause the congestion, you cause the pollution, so you have to pay for it. So even things like carbon tax, I think we had it a few years ago for vehicles over here, but it's not in place anymore now, I think. So you're made to pay a price for the carbon that you're emitting. Right? So this is where this cost benefit analysis comes into play. So it's typically mainly used by the public sector in making social economic decisions. So when it comes to undertaking infrastructure projects or implementing certain policies, programs, regulations to see if the social benefits are more than the social costs, you can undertake a cost benefit analysis. So basically, by carrying out a CBA, you can ensure that the projects actually contribute to a net social welfare. That means the total social benefits are more than the total social costs. So in CBA, rather than a financial appraisal, you're considering costs and benefits to society as a whole, not just a private investor or a private company only. This is sometimes referred to as project economic analysis or social cost benefit analysis also. So to sort of definitions of what CBA is. One, Boardman says it's a project assessment method that tries to quantify in monetary terms the value of all consequences of a policy, a particular policy or an investment decision to all members of society, so not just the investor. According to the Asian Development Bank, it's an analytical framework for converting the costs and benefits of a project to comparable monetary units. So basically, in a CBA, we want to convert all the costs, all the benefits to society as a whole to money terms and see if the benefits are more than the costs or not. So the difference here, compared to a normal financial appraisal, you are trying to capture these activities, these externalities, which would normally not be priced by markets. So you're quantifying the costs and benefits to society as a whole and not just the private parties. So this is mainly, as you can tell, this would be mainly a forecasting exercise, right? And the main purpose would be to help in social decision making. So we can make government, public sector entity, they can make decisions using a more rational basis, whether to undertake a particular project or not. And it will also then help to allocate these limited public resources in a more efficient way, where we get the most social benefits. So by using CBA, governments can decide whether they should invest taxpayers' money, the public money, in a particular project or not. And they can better allocate these scarce public resources. So here we have a small comparison of the two types of analysis. We've been talking about the financial analysis, financial appraisal, and the economic analysis. So financial analysis, usually what you have been talking about so far, would be appraisals that are undertaken from a individual or a project agency's perspective, client's perspective, whereas economic analysis would be undertaken from the society's perspective. So you're taking into consideration not just the financial costs, but also the social, economic benefits and costs. Whereas in a financial analysis, you will typically only consider the cost benefits that are faced by the production or the decision making units, the client or the producer. So in terms of evaluating your benefits and costs when you're doing a financial analysis, you can use typically the existing market prices, your material prices, labor prices, etc., and your revenue that you get. All those things, you can do that using existing market prices. But in an economic analysis, we have to use something called shadow prices, because we will have to then adjust the financial prices for to allow for certain things, because the financial prices, they will not always reflect these externalities. Now, that we were talking about. So, if there are any distortions in prices due to things like taxes, subsidies, all those things, then that will not be an accurate value for that product. Say, for instance, say if I price electricity that I'm using to produce something at a subsidized price that I am currently paying, that's not an accurate reflection of the price of that product. So I have to adjust that price to account for that subsidy. So likewise, we will look at this in a bit more detail in a little bit. We use something called shadow pricing in economic analysis to adjust these financial prices to reflect the total costs and benefits to society. So in financial analysis, on the other hand, you just measure the project's profitability for its participants. As an investor, whether you're making a profit or not. So you're only focusing on the direct benefits, costs of your project participants. So then why you will want to carry out a cost benefit analysis? You can actually use it for two main purposes. One, when you're considering a particular investment, a particular project, we can use a CBA to decide whether to undertake that project or not. So it's to check the feasibility, basically, of a particular investment opportunity. Then the other type is to select between particular project alternatives. Also, we can use CBA. We can compare different projects. So we have a limited X amount of money. We want to decide which project to invest that money in. Is it, say, we have, say, 3 alternatives, which one to choose? So that also we can do through a cost benefit analysis. So there are several different types of cost benefit analysis also, depending on primarily depending on when you do this. So for instance, ex ante, that's the most commonly used type of CBA. That's where you basically do an analysis before you undertake the particular project, before you start a particular project, implement a particular project, check to see whether it's actually beneficial or not. On the other hand, there's something called an ex post CBA also that you can actually do at the end of a project. Say it's a highway construction. So once you have completed the construction, you can do a cost benefit analysis. So the difference here is that you now have the actual costs and the actual benefits. And you can then use that as a lessons learned type of exercise. So you can kind of get an idea whether a particular type of project is worthwhile undertaking. So is it actually worthwhile to undertake another similar type of highway? And then sometimes you can do a CBA during a project also, while the project is in progress. And that would basically help you to decide whether to keep going with the project or just to discontinue that. And then you can also do comparative CBA, whether you can, that's where you can do, say, something like a ex ante and ex post CPA. That means you have a cost benefit analysis you did before you started the project, and you do a cost benefit analysis after you finish the project, and you can kind of compare and see how accurate your predictions were, how basically how the two compares. So again, that can be used as a learning exercise, whether your estimates were correct, whether the things you originally forecasted were accurate. Likewise. But as I was saying, the most common would be this first type, standard CBA, ex ante CBA, where you do an appraisal analysis before you uh, decide to undertake a project. So these are the main steps in doing a cost benefit analysis. So starting with defining a project and specifying the available alternatives, then deciding whose benefits and costs we are going to count, then identifying the impacts, then predicting the impacts quantitatively and monetizing these impacts, discounting them, then calculating the net present value, performing sensitivity analysis, and making recommendations. So we'll go through each of these steps one by one. Do you all have access to your Moodle platform for this particular module, the project appraisal module? Yeah. Because I just went there was nothing there, so I didn't upload anything there. Okay, then what I can do is I have a couple of, say, CBA reports with me, say, which have been undertaken for actual projects. So one done for the Central Expressway project, and I think I have another one that's being conducted for the LRT project that was cancelled a few years ago. So I can upload those reports on there, so you can just say some of those. You can just go through basically and see how this has been done in practice. So I'll do that there, and we'll just go through each of these steps here one by one.
Recording stopped.
It's 3:30 now. Shall we take a small break and start from there then? Maybe 20 minutes. Is that okay? Can you come back at 3:50?
Okay, madam.
Okay, thank you. See you then. Okay, so I hope you're back. We'll start back up again.
Recording in progress.
So the first step in doing a cost benefit analysis is for us to clearly understand what the project is and any alternative solutions that we might need to consider, and the counterfactual against which we have to consider the cost and benefits of the project. So what do we mean by the counterfactual here? So in CBA, we compare our project which we are considering with any project that would be displaced or not undertaken if we are to go ahead with the option that we are evaluating. So basically, in other words, this would be the scenario that would be there if we don't undertake the project. It's known as the counterfactual. So in other words, this might be also referred to as the current status quo, or the do nothing scenario, or the do minimum scenario. So either we can do the project or we can not do the project. And what will be the situation if we don't do the project? So it's by considering that counterfactual that we will be considering our costs and benefits of undertaking a particular project. So say this idea of doing nothing might not always be the case. For instance, say it might be that, say, the government has money, resources. So your options are either you can construct a new highway project and maintain the alternative routes, or you cannot construct the highway, but you can expand the capacity of the existing road. So if you don't undertake the project, still you can't do nothing because, say, the capacity of the existing system might not be sufficient. So the minimum that you have to do would be to expand the capacity of the existing road system. So depending on your scenario, you have to identify, okay, what will be the situation with the project and without the project. So sometimes it might be the status quo. So if you are building the new highway, yes. If you are not building the new highway, then the status quo might be, okay, we have to maintain our existing road network. Or it might be we have to expand our existing road network because what we have now is not sufficient. So clearly we have to identify what we are comparing against. Situation with the project and the situation without the project. So depending on what you select for your counterfactual, your results of your analysis would be different. So this is an example from again a CBA exercise. Say here the proposed project consists of rehabilitating and expanding the existing infrastructure capacity. That involves euro 450 million investment. So if we don't do that, don't undertake the project, then at the minimum, doing minimum will involve only rehabilitating the existing capacity. So you're not expanding, you're only rehabilitating the current infrastructure. So that will involve an investment of 30 million euro and associated benefits. Or the other option is we can continue our business as usual. So doing nothing at all, involving no investment at all. And that will then in turn affect what sort of benefits we get. Says, so you can see here the results of the cost benefit analysis. It changes significantly depending on which of these scenarios we are comparing against. Whether we are comparing this project with this do minimum scenario, which involves rehabilitating our existing infrastructure, or the business as usual scenario, which involves doing nothing, no investment at all. So if you are comparing it with the business as usual, the project will have our project that we are considering has higher benefits as opposed to when we compare it with the do minimum scenario. So you have to clearly justify, if you are an analyst undertaking a CBA for a public sector project, why you are selecting a particular situation in the absence of the project and why that's the most likely scenario. So have a look at this, for instance. So what are the different project alternatives you can identify here?
Recording stopped.
Anybody? So it says provincial government is considering constructing a new expressway. So it can have 4 lanes, and either you can do it either with tolls or without tolls. It can be a tolled highway or a free expressway. So the different project alternatives you might consider when you're doing your analysis is maybe you can have an expressway with tolls, or you can have an expressway without tolls. And you can consider the costs and benefits in each of those scenarios. when you're calculating costs, it will be with the against the counterfactual, that is the without project scenario. So without the expressway scenario. So when you're comparing additional
Recording in
benefits,
progress.
costs, so why we are defining the counterfactual is we are actually comparing, when we are doing a CPA, additional benefits and costs that we get with the project compared to the without the project scenario. So anyway, we will have to incur whatever the things we have to incur if we don't do the projects. So in addition to that, any additional costs or benefits would be what we consider in the with project scenario, only the incremental costs and benefits because of the project. So if we undertake the project, what will be the additional costs or benefits that we will incur? So it would be something like, say, social costs and benefits. If we build the highway, so if we build the highway, we have two alternatives. We can build it either with tolls or without tolls. We can compare it with the costs and benefits. If the highway were not built, that's status quo, do nothing scenario. Okay, clear? Now, sometimes, say, if we are not doing a particular project, as we mentioned earlier, still there might be certain things we have to do. So it might not mean that we can do nothing, but say maybe the government will have to maintain the existing road, even if you don't build this new highway. So then that will incur a particular cost. So it will be any additional costs on top of that that you will have to consider when you are appraising the new alternatives. So the other thing here that's interesting here, so in this example, say, so we identify two main alternatives. So we can either build the highway with tolls, with a charge, or without tolls, relative to the status quo. But in reality, there can be many other alternatives, isn't it? So for example, there can be an infinite number of alternatives. Say, depending on when you start the project, say it could be started, say in 1 year's time, 2 years' time, 5 years' time. So your benefits, your costs, everything will be affected by that, depending on when you decide to start the project. And then depending on your choice of material, there can be lots of different alternatives. So you can build the road surface using bitumen or concrete or any other surface type. So your highway, the route that it takes, there can be lots of different alternatives, the size, the number of lanes. So I think here also in Sri Lanka also originally expressways, the proposal was supposed to be for I think 6 lanes. And it was taken down. So there are different alternatives. The amount of toll can be different. So there can be, say, millions of different alternatives if you consider all those things. So maybe considering comparing each and every one of those small changes, different alternatives will not be practical. So you will have to, as a CBA analyst, will have to select a set of say most likely scenarios options for analysis. So you can consider each of those alternatives as a separate project and do your analysis. See which option gives you the most benefits. So which alternatives to consider, it will involve some kind of a little bit of creativity, some innovative thinking, some economic perspective as well. And it's important for an analyst to let the decision makers know which kind of alternatives you have considered in, say, recommending a particular option. So, say, typically in a CBA exercise, say, they say like it's better to keep your analysis to, say, maximum 6 alternatives for practical purposes. So otherwise it will not be practical to, or you might not have the resources or the time to do a proper analysis of, say 20, 30 different options. So that's the first step. So we have to first understand what our project is. Then what's the situation if we don't undertake the project without the project scenario or the counterfactual against which we will have to estimate our costs and benefits of undertaking the project. And then also identify any alternative options that we might have to consider in coming up with a recommendation. Then step number 2 is to identify whose costs and benefits we have to consider in the CBA. So we said at the beginning, we are in this one, rather than just the financial costs and benefits, that means the private costs to the investor or the project agency. We are looking at social costs and benefits here. So when we say social costs and benefits, who do we really consider? Whose costs and benefits do we really consider? So say this could be done at different levels. So depending on how you do the analysis, you can do a CBA analysis at, say, provincial level. So considering a certain province. So you can consider the costs and benefits to people in a particular area due to a project. Or you can do CBA from a national perspective. So considering the costs and benefits to a country as a whole. Sometimes even in a global perspective. So the parties whose costs and benefits we take into consideration is known as people or parties with standing. So we take into consideration the costs and benefits of the parties with standing. So it can be at provincial level or national level. So when we are then, once we know at which level whose costs and benefits we have to consider, then the next step would be to actually go and identify the actual costs and benefits. So then here we have to identify all the cost benefits that will impact on these people that have standing on the project. So when we are identifying costs and benefits, it should be things that are, say, observable consequences on people. So it means things that we can measure. So we have to identify these things as comprehensively as possible. And we are basically, when we say consequences, these would be impacts on people rather than, say, particular organizations or decision makers, whatever. So when if we are to identify something as an impact of a particular project, they need to be directly attributable to the project. So it should be a cost or a benefit that you incur because of the project, not something that you will incur anyway. So there should be a direct cause and effect relationship. Say air pollution due to a highway construction or congestion due to say construction project. So it should be something that's directly happening as a result of that particular project being undertaken. And it should also be a real cost or benefit. That means there should be a change in real resources. So things like depreciation, we are not considering. And also any costs or benefits that do not change as a result of the decision, we are not considering. So that's why we say we identify the costs and benefits compared to the counterfactual scenario. So without the project scenario. So any incremental costs or benefits we get on top of the without the project scenario. So when we are identifying costs and benefits, we have to take care to avoid double counting. That means the same cost or benefit identifying in, say, under two different places or things like that. So if you look at the left-hand side here, say things like, say, in a highway construction project, you identify a benefit as improving general traffic journey times. So that's very vague. It's, say, you can make it more specific. So when you're identifying costs and benefits, so be specific and as easy to measure as possible. Say if you say travel time savings, that's easier to measure, forecast, predict, and model. The impacts positively on wider network performance. So what does that mean? Does that include travel time savings or vehicle operating cost savings? So you can make your identified costs and benefits as specific as possible. So identifying things like, okay, travel time savings, vehicle operating cost savings separately. So it's then easier to measure. So again, coming back to our previous example, can you identify the costs and benefits in this particular scenario and try to catalog them as a cost or a benefit?
Recording stopped.
So what can be the basic costs associated? Yeah. There will be, of course, a construction cost involved. There might be maintenance costs. Then if it's the with toll scenario, there'll be a cost associated with collecting tolls and constructing and maintaining toll booths. In terms of benefits, there can be, say, time savings and vehicle operating cost savings. There can be a residual value at the end of the discounting period, the life cycle that you consider. There can be certain safety benefits, say accidents that you avoid or lives that you might save because of, say, safer new highway or the shorter new highway. There can be benefits on the alternative routes due to reduced congestion and things like that. And if you're going with the tolled option, there will be a revenue from tolls as well. Any other ideas?
Recording in progress.
So that will be your first task. So you will have to first identify the individual cost and the benefits that will be there for the project. You have to categorize them as either a cost or a benefit. So under costs, of course, there can be other external costs that are not listed here, and you also didn't mention. So things like, say, increased pollution, air pollution, noise pollution. If you're costing those things also, they can be added there. Once you identify your costs and benefits, then you have to assign measurement indicators or metrics to each of these costs and benefits that we can then use to predict the impacts. Say, for instance, to calculate safety benefits or to calculate the reduced vehicle operating costs. So what are the metrics that you are going to use? It might be, say, in terms of number of lives saved per year, or number of person hours of travel time saved, or the dollar value of fuel saved. To measure the reduced vehicle operating costs. Likewise, we had to assign metrics, how we can measure each of these impacts that we identify. So things like construction costs or maintenance costs, so those would be easy to cost, comparatively easier to cost. But for things like, say, vehicle operating cost savings or safety benefits or alternative route benefits or pollution. Then for those things, you have to find and assign metrics as to how you are going to quantify those things. So based on the data we have available and based on how easy for us to then assign a money value for these things, we have to select these metrics. So it's doesn't like it's no use giving a metric if we can't assign a money value to it. So for instance, if you're saying number of lives saved per year, if you're using that as a metric to measure the safety benefits, then you have to be able to assign a money value to a life, isn't it? Human life. There has to be some way of doing it. You need to have data available to do that. So how much money, how much value would you assign there? Likewise, right? And then you have to then go and forecast or predict the impacts over the life cycle of the project quantitatively. So, say, as an analyst, they might have to determine what are the most probable or most likely amount of impacts that might happen during the life cycle. Say, number of, say, hours of travel time saved. So you'll have to predict. So, say, dollar value of fuel saved, again you have to predict. So how many cars will use the road, so what's the fuel usage per each vehicle. Then likewise we have to forecast. So you can do this either based on, say, available historical statistics or similar projects that might have been undertaken in other places. But if you have a project that is very unique, the first time that you're doing something, or have a very long time horizon with, say, complex interrelationships among, say, different costs and benefits, then it can be quite difficult to predict these impacts. See, if it's the first time ever that you're undertaking a tolled expressway project in a country, so then you don't have any historical statistics or similar projects or things like that. So your predictions, forecasting would be more difficult. So this step, predicting impacts, forecasting impacts for your project for the, say, for its lifestyle cycle, which may be, say, 20 years, 25 years, whatever the life cycle that you consider, that will involve a lot of uncertainty. So there can be lots of things that go wrong. So because of this step is usually much more difficult compared to the previous steps of the CBA. So this impacts, forecasting impacts also, we are doing against the counterfactual, that is the without the project scenario. So any change in costs or benefits that would be there compared to what would have been the case without the project. So I will let me share this CBA report with you. So I'll show you how the things we have been discussing so far have actually been done in practice.
Recording stopped.
So this is a bit of a dated CVA report now from April 2016, done for the
Recording in
the
progress.
Central Expressway project by the Transport Engineering Division of University of Moreton. I will just show you so some of the things that we have been discussing so far, how it is reflected here, right? So there is some background information. So we discussed when we are identifying costs and benefits, we have to do it compared to the counterfactual scenario. In here, what they refer to as the base case. So what will be there if the project is not going ahead. So here their base case, it's the do minimum scenario. So if you're not building this expressway, but you still have to undertake road network improvements to the existing road network. So that is the base case, the without project scenario. So all the costs and benefits of the project, you calculate as incremental costs and benefits compared to this situation. So even if you do nothing, you still have to improve the existing network. Even if you don't do the project, expressway project, so you still have to incur these costs to improve the network. So there's no use considering those things in analyzing the project. So they are actually doing their identifications of costs and benefits compared to this do minimum scenario. So say you can see here the forecast, the predictions of say vehicle trips, all those things, and the alternative scenarios that they are considering. So you can the expressway project could have could take different routes. So say they are considering 5 different scenarios as options here. Scenario 3 is Kadawathu Kurunagala with Kotuheragalagatru and Mambepusseling. So say different sections taken as different alternative project scenarios. So then the analysis period that they are considering for this analysis is 30 years. So it's including a construction period, 4 years, and then the rest of it an operation period. So for each of the different scenarios, then you have to predict, forecast what the impacts will be. So the amount of traffic is modeled. So based on different vehicle types, private vehicles, business vehicles, light commercial vehicles, heavy vehicles. Likewise, all the 5 different project alternatives. say, so say to do these kinds of forecasting modeling, you will of course need subject experts. So say one person, say you who's doing a common, maybe a project, coming from a project management background, might not be able to do all of these things by yourself. So you need to predict these, say, quantities, how the demand would be, what these impacts would be. You will need inputs from, of course, you will need inputs from experts in the area. So that's why. So this is actually done by the people with expertise in the transportation. So here, the main benefits that they have identified are the travel time savings, vehicle operating cost reduction, and accident reduction. There are additional benefits also, like emission reduction, regional economic growth, reduction of deterioration of highway network due to diversion of heavy vehicles to the expressway. However, they are saying, so they can't estimate these benefits reliably because they don't have the available data for that in Sri Lanka. So they have not quantified these benefits. In this particular analysis only, these benefits have been quantified. So they have used different values for, say, value of time for different vehicle times to calculate the travel time savings, and for vehicle operating cost savings also. So say these, then they would have to multiply by the estimated predicted usage demand, how many vehicles that they predict to use the expressway. So you can see how much say forecasting is involved here. So the accuracy of the analysis depends very much on the accuracy of your predictions, the forecasts that you do, the models, the how you estimate these impacts to be throughout the analysis period. So we talked about availability of data when we are quantifying these costs and benefits. Say, for example, say this reduction of accident rates. So they say in Sri Lanka, we don't have any present estimates for accident rates. So these types of accident rates, damage only type of accidents, grievous or non-grievous type accidents for expressways in Sri Lanka. So therefore, say reduction of fatal accidents only they have been able to consider. So we have data available to cost fatal accidents. So they have economic value of fatal accident as 1.5 million as per the 99 values. So this is taken from a Department of National Planning in Sri Lanka. So that's the only data that they have available that they could use. They're saying that they were not able to then cost these other type of accidents due to the lack of data available. Any questions so far? So yeah, so once you have predicted your impacts quantitatively, then the next step would be to value those costs and benefits. So like you saw in the report, we have to assign a money value to each of our identified cost and benefits. So if it's a reduction in accidents, we have to assign it a monetary value. So why we do that? Then we can directly compare one cost with another, the costs with the benefits, and they are all in the same units. So when it's all in dollars and it's all in rupees, it's easy to compare. Okay, we have more costs than the benefits, or we have more benefits than the costs. Otherwise, we can't compare if it's not expressed in the same terms. And when we are valuing these costs and benefits, we consider the whole life of the project or the evaluation period. And we measure these costs and benefits in real terms, that is, without inflation. So as we discussed before, so if you're a private client, a private investor, you will mainly rely on your, say, how much money you're spending and how much money you're getting back based on market prices to check your costs and benefits from a particular project. But for a public sector investment decision, we saw that there will be lots of other complexities involved. Wide scope of costs and benefits, social costs and benefits, externalities involved. So just directly taking into consideration these market prices is not possible. And sometimes there are no market prices available also. So things like, say, travel time savings, it's not priced in the open market. So we have to assign some value to that. So if there are any, say, market imperfections where there are subsidies, taxes, or say where the external costs are not considered, where the actual market price are not reflecting the actual value of a good or service, we will have to make certain adjustments to those financial prices to reflect the true social costs and benefits. So in a CBA, whatever the inputs that we put into the project, when we are pricing them, we usually consider the opportunity costs of those inputs. So what do we mean by the opportunity cost? Basically, if we use some resource like land, labor, material, whatever, and devote them to a specific project, that means those resources will no longer be available to use in other projects or for any other thing, to produce any other good or service. So the opportunity cost of a particular project input will be how much value we are foregoing by using that particular resource in a particular project. So whatever its value in its best alternative case use. How much value it will have if it was used in that other option. If we didn't use it in this particular project, what will be its value in its best alternative use? So the project inputs, things that we put into the project, land, labor, materials, everything else, we value using these opportunity costs. And then the project outputs, whatever the output, say if you're building an expressway, the output would be the expressway, the road. And how do we value the benefit that you get from that? Or how do we value that particular output? Usually in CBA exercises, people use something called willingness to pay. So if you don't have any market value for the benefit that you get, you can use this willingness to pay concept to measure the direct benefits. So basically what that means is you can say do a survey and see how much people would be willing to pay to enjoy a particular project impact. Or if it's a negative impact, how much people would be willing to pay to avoid it, or willing to accept as compensation to for suffering that particular disadvantage. So you can maybe do an opinion poll or say a survey, and you can check to see how much they would be willing to pay to get a particular benefit. So it will be something that you don't have a market price for, so you can get some idea how much people value it. Say, for example, say this is from a environmental protection study. So say in America, they have conducted a willingness to pay survey and found that say on average, they are willing to pay $257 to prevent the extinction of this particular type of bald eagle, or $208 to protect humpback whales. So that's how much value an average American places on protecting that particular species. So, sorry. So when it comes to this pricing, these inputs and outputs, getting a value for these inputs and outputs, we have to say particularly the inputs. So for the land, labor, materials, usually we have the financial prices, the market prices, but they might not reflect the actual true value of that particular project input. considering the social costs, taking into consideration any subsidies or taxes that might have been imposed that might have distorted the prices, all those things. So to take account of those things, to adjust these financial prices to reflect those social externalities, we use something called shadow prices. So we convert these financial prices into something called shadow prices to take into consideration those other aspects, social aspects. So these shadow prices, they actually reflect the social opportunity costs of goods and services instead of the price that you observe in the market, which may be distorted. So by converting these financial prices into shadow prices, we are making sure that these prices, they reflect the actual real cost of the resources. So not just the private costs, but also the social costs. So you're basically correcting the price that we observe in the market to reflect their actual opportunity costs. So you're making sure that any unpriced gains, losses, these external costs and benefits are taken into consideration. So usually in CBS, you do this by assigning what you call a conversion factor to the financial cost, to convert them into their economic costs, to make sure that they reflect the opportunity costs. So you can basically multiply the financial cost or the market price with this conversion factor to obtain their economic, the actual, the value reflecting the social costs and benefits. So if you have a conversion factor which is higher than 1, that would mean the price that you observe in the market price is actually lower than the shadow price. So the actual value of that resource is higher than what you observe in the market. If you have a conversion factor that's lower than 1, that means the price that you observe in the market price of that resource is actually higher than its actual economic price. Maybe because of taxes or other market distortions. So say, for instance, they say in Sri Lanka, sometimes the vehicles are more expensive than in Japan, isn't it? So again, due to things like taxes and all these other market distortions. So this is taken from that Central Expressway example, that report that we were looking at. So there they say the maintenance and operating costs, financial maintenance and operating costs, they have estimated for the Central Expressway for the 30-year period is say 2.78 billion per year. So that's at market prices. They say you have to use a shadow price factor of 0.83 to convert this financial costs which includes things like taxes, VAT, to its economic value. So they're actually saying what this 2.78 billion is actually higher than the actual cost of this maintenance and operation. Because of taxes and that, the price is inflated. So to remove that, we use this conversion factor. They have used this conversion factor 0.83 to get the actual economic value for the maintenance and operation. So in this example, then what should be the economic value of operation and maintenance costs that should be considered in the CBA?
Recording stopped.
Anyone? So you basically have to
Recording in progress.
multiply 2.78 billion by 0.83, isn't it? To get the economic value of the operation and maintenance costs. So it's around 2.3 billion per year, the actual economic value of the O&M costs. So I'll show you in the report actually. So here, say they have estimated the construction cost. For different sections. It's given in rupees billion. And then the operation and maintenance costs also they have estimated. Then they say for the economic analysis, we need to convert these are in financial cost, the market values now. We have to convert that to represent the economic costs. That means taking into consideration those, externalities, any distortions due to, say, taxes and all those things, inflation, taxes, all those things. So for that, they say a factor of 0.844. It has been used in the Northern Expressway feasibility study to convert the construction financial cost to economic cost. So you can use that to convert the construction cost to its economic costs. And also a conversion factor of 0.83 you can use to convert the financial cost of operation and maintenance to its economic value. Okay. So as I said before, so at your level, say it will not be up to you to do all these, say, predictions, forecasts, um, valuations, all those things. So, say, of course, there will have to be specific subject experts involved to do those things. So, but what you need to do is, as a project manager, you need to know how, say, basically how a CBA is conducted and how you can use the information that you find in a CBA to make project decisions in terms of project appraisal, isn't it? So without knowing how they have done this, you will not be able to make a sound judgment. So that's why we are learning these things. So of course, say, uh, based on your backgrounds, most of you will not be expected to do say a forecast of say if you're in a involved in a transport project, you will not be able to do, say, asked to do all these predictions, forecasts of, say, traffic models or things like that. But still, we need to know how these things are done, isn't it? So what you mean by economic value, why you need these conversion factors, all those things. So any questions? Okay, so likewise, all the costs, benefits, each and every impact you have identified, you will have to then assign a money value to. Once you have done that, you might still end up with some, say, benefits or costs that you are not able to quantify. So in that Central Expressway project also, we saw that, yes, they have identified that there are the other things, other, what were they? Other costs, say pollution and all those things that they have not considered in the analysis. Also, there were other benefits, like, let me show you. See here, they say there are these additional benefits. So there are reductions in vehicle emissions, regional economic growth, reduction of deterioration of the highway network, because the heavy vehicles will be using the expressway. So there are all these benefits, but they haven't been able to quantify them. So there can be cases like that. So either due to lack of data, say, or lack of reliable data, there might be certain impacts that you are not able to quantify. So what you can do in situations like this is you can actually carry out your cost benefit analysis using the quantified costs and benefits, and you can show your results against these unquantified costs and benefits. So for instance, something like this. So you can show your actual quantified costs and benefit, and then just list and mention any unquantified benefits and costs also. So when the decision maker looks at this, they can decide, okay, this project is making a loss of 8 million. When you consider these quantified costs and benefits, but there is also a particular unquantified benefit here, a benefit they haven't been able to put a money value on. It's the national identity benefit. So this is about, say, building a national monument, something like, let's say, our Nelum Kuluna or something. So there are certain benefits and costs that you can quantify. So for instance, using the space for exhibition, the construction cost, the maintenance cost. So based on those things, you have a net present value of negative 8 billion. So you're making a loss. So just by looking at it, you're saying, okay, this project is not worthwhile. But you see, okay, there is a benefit like this also, which really we were not able to assign a value to. So when you're making a decision, what you have to consider is, does the willingness to pay for the contribution of this national identity benefit, is it more than 8 million? If it's more than 8 million, then it balances out. Then the project will be beneficial. So if you're undertaking the project, that would be what is implied, that you actually think in this national identity benefit is worth 8 million. Any questions?
Recording stopped.
So I will stop there for the day. We'll continue from there next time. So any comments or questions about the things we have discussed so far?
Madam, can we get the presentation to Moodle?
Yes, I will upload to Moodle tonight to your project appraisal, the Moodle page, right?
Okay, madam.
Okay. Along with the CBA report also, so you can have a look at it there. Have you started doing these discounting exercises, this project, NPV calculations with Dr. Danuja? Have you done that? Calculating net present values, those things? Yeah, you've done the discounting, no? Yes, okay. Okay then, so if there are no other questions, we can stop there for the day. So we'll continue from there next time onwards. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
I'll end the meeting.
Okay, madam. Thank you.